Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 2 of the anime series Shokugeki no Soma, Sara, or the Second Plate. And I have to admit that, I was a mite irked by the end of this episode, just because we don't get a sense of closure. We don't actually find out who wins in this matchup between Megumi and Ryo, respectively. And I kind of wish we would have. I was very much highly speculative in last week's review, talking about I thought it was probably going to be Ryo who would win, because of course you want to see Ryo and Soma going at it, at a later stage, basically having to be in a matchup like this, a food battle. And I started thinking about it more and more, and I was like, well, they could really throw a wrench in the works and have Megumi win, and then have to see Megumi and Soma facing off against each other. These two very closely knit friends and everything, they've been through so much together. Wouldn't it be uber compelling to see them having to then compete against each other in this same sort of Food Wars format? So I don't know. I wish we would have gotten an answer by the end of this episode. And it was also a little irksome, the start of the episode, because I kind of wish we would have gotten everything that happened between Alice and Soma, respectively, at the start of this episode, toward the tail end of the previous. I feel like it would have been a sort of greater sense of closure with that particular matchup as well. But I guess you couldn't have really let out of that episode with Alice, basically having her encounter with Arina and everything as easily as the start of this episode. So there's that for it. What I really liked about this episode was getting a sense of the history of who Ryo was, how Alice met him, that he's always been this way. He's always been cocksure and sort of a maniac when it comes to making food and bossing people around, and having people very much bowing to his whims and his prowess and all that kind of stuff. And Alice saw that potential in him, and just, I don't want to say she's swooning over him necessarily, but she's definitely just rocked by the powerhouse abilities that he has. And as we see, with this sort of cliffhanger, we're going to be waiting with bated breath, which is not to make a pun out of the fact that we have a lot of seafood and fish stock going on in the production of the ramen, which is the, sort of basis for this particular matchup in this episode. And all of that's always fascinating to me. Of course, I can't always say I have a taste for what everything is supposed to taste like. They describe it in intricate detail, and they have all the characters sort of foodgasming, but not really as imaginative so far as we've seen in the previous season, with the exception, I have to say, of toward the end of the episode, this sort of seeing Megumi and Ryu, summoning their sort of like crab-like and then clam-like fighters, and they're going to go up against each other, and it's really a battle of wills, as one of the judges says. That to me was the closest this season thus far, and it's only 2 episodes, I know, but has thus far gotten to those crazy, over-the-top, sort of imaginative sequences we've seen in the first season, and that's something I was missing with the first episode. I don't really need the nudity. I mean, we even have Arina, basically all bare in the OP and everything like that, and that's always funny, especially with the devil himself, the chief judge, having to go shirtless depending on his reaction to certain flavors and tastes and things like that. And subsequently this happens again in this episode with Ryu's ramen. But yeah, I mean, it was much funnier than the last episode for me. That humor, that sense of humor and over the topness was coming to the fore again in this episode. I felt like this episode was much more fleshed out. They spent time, going back on the back history of Ryo, and even Megumi to a point, calling back on the flavors of all the ingredients she sent from home and everything like that. There was just a greater sense of depth in this episode than the last one, for my tastes, because I felt like the last episode really went sort of rushed. Everything happened so quickly. And as I was saying, I was kind of dumbfounded by the fact that Alice had been out for the count by the end of episode 1 of season 2 already. And I'm really grateful to those of you guys who have been commenting, letting me know, the manga readers, because I'm not familiar with the manga, and posting no spoilers as well, which is greatly appreciated. But letting me know which things have been switched around or edited out, the whole thing with the kids in Soma was an entire manga chapter. They really didn't spend that much time on it. They just sort of flashed back to it briefly during his encounter with Alice and everything. And so having those insights, posted by you guys, again, spoiler free, is always greatly appreciated to me, because I'm always curious. The very sort of I guess you could say infamous ping pong chapter, which was from season 1. I've heard a lot about this particular chapter. It makes me want to go and actually dig it up and read it, if somebody can post which chapter that is, because I'm highly curious about it. I mean, people seem to really be upset that this was not included in the anime, and hopefully maybe one day they can do an OVA of it or something like that, maybe with the kids as well, with Soma, and whatever else they have had to scrimp on. But I really was happier, I should say, with this episode, that it was much more, I thought, given character depth and everything like that. Seeing the back histories again of Ryo and calling back on Megumi's past, which we really got a lot of great flavor for, no pun intended once again, in season 1. And seeing them go up against each other, how fierce, Ryo is, and how there is such a ferocity in Megumi as well. But it's sort of a timid ferocity. It's again a battle of wills, and it just makes it that much more so. I'm salivating. I'm like, who won? Toward the end of the episode, we see the Grandmaster himself picking up the giant paintbrush, and he's about to say who the winner is, declare the winner. And now we just gotta wait till next week. So annoying, but yeah, I will definitely be chomping at the bit to see who of these two competitors wins. And I hope we get more of the over-the-topness, the crazy sort of dream sequence, foodgasms, and such like that. And when people are going up against each other like we got in this episode. And let me know in the comments below if you guys have seen this episode, what you thought of it, if you enjoyed it as much as I did, if you thought it was a much more fleshed out episode than the previous, as I feel myself. And yeah, anything goes in the comments below. Love it or hate it. I love having the conversation. So yeah, otherwise that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.